Good morning. It's 11:30, and I was told we need to start at 11:30, so that's what we're going to do. Good morning, and I want to welcome everybody to spending time out of their busy schedule to be with us here today for the North Atlantic Conjugate Margin Symposium 2017. Our first presentation is from our Chief Executive Officer, Kristian Johansen. He'll be here for the welcome and introduction.
Thank you very much, Steve, and thanks for all of you who took the time to come and listen to our presentations today. Thanks to the team for organizing this, and a special thanks to Dr. Richard Wright, who's the keynote speaker today. I followed his presentation in Houston yesterday, and it was excellent, so we're looking forward to that again today. My name is Kristian Johansen. I'm the CEO of TGS. I'm just going to take you through a quick introduction of the Atlantic Margin Symposium, actually the second one that we have. So we had two, one in Houston and one in Calgary last year, and then we do the same this year. It was a great success last year, and we see from the attendance today that it's going to be very good today too. So talking about the Atlantic Margin, we just had a how's the sound, by the way? It's okay? You can hear me? Good. So we had a board meeting about 3 months ago, and we had a keynote speaker or a guest speaker from one of the super majors. He was executive vice president responsible for global exploration, and there was a question from the board about if he was running a multi-client seismic company, which regions would he focus on, where did he see the growth going forward, etc. And his response was that it's always easier to make discoveries in areas where there already is oil. So start where you know that there is oil from before. That's always a good starting point. And Atlantic Margin was basically the area he pointed at, saying that that's where you have had major discoveries over so many years. It's a very safe area to explore, and the area still needs more high-quality seismic. And that takes me to the first slide of the presentation. Atlantic Margin is the key focus area for TGS. If you look at the map behind me, you'll see that all the blue dots is our global data library. And although we have a big data library in places like Australia, Indonesia, US Gulf of Mexico, etc., you see that the Atlantic Margin is and has been a key area of focus for TGS. Then you see some dark blue boxes with some projects that have been announced, and these are just the projects that we're doing right now or that we're doing in 2017. And then obviously we have lots of plans of expanding this area further with newer and greater seismic. But let me just go very quickly through some of the projects that we're doing right now. But this will be covered in more detail later in the presentation. So in East Canada has been really great for TGS this year. We have secured a lot of work. We're actually going to have three 3D vessels, 3 high-capacity 3D vessels active in Canada throughout the summer season. We're shooting 4 3Ds and 2 2Ds in Canada. So it's the greatest investment program that we've ever carried out for TGS. Some of this is done in close collaboration with Nalcor, as you know, and it's been a great. It's been a great program for TGS for many years. We've been there. This is the 7th consecutive season together with PGS, and we're shooting 2D and 3D seismic in Canada. If you go to the other side of the margin, you see it starts with Barents Sea. So we just finished an electromagnetic project in the Barents Sea in Q1. We're also doing, or have announced, Carson, which is a 3D that we're doing in the Barents Sea, and that just adds to the industry's greatest and biggest database in the Barents Sea, which has been a focus area for TGS. We shot our first 3D, I guess, in 2009. We've been active shooting 3D ever since then. Then in the Norwegian Sea, we have a 40,000 square kilometer 3D. It's the biggest 3D ever shot in Europe. And this is a rather frontier area in the Norwegian Sea that we've just started that survey. I guess we have 3 vessels active shooting that survey. The 4th vessel is probably going to start within a few weeks. In Ireland, we're shooting a 3D called Cream, and this is in the Porcupine Basin of Ireland, where we already have existing data. And then in Northwest Africa, we just finished phase 1 of the NRAM, so Northwest African Margin, and we're doing phase 2 pretty much as we speak. So a very active season in the Atlantic margin. You will hear much more about that today. And as I said, this is and has been a focus area for TGS for many, many years. This is an area with a lot of discoveries and a good way to continue to do exploration. Few words about our strategy, which you can clearly characterize as counter-cyclical. We all know that the market is and has been very challenging for some time. We still think it's going to be challenging. There is no clear signs that the oil price will bounce back to the hundreds again, but if it happens, we're all going to be happy. But we're not planning based on that. We're planning based on a market that will continue to be quite challenging. But what we're doing is that, first of all, we have been through a period where there has been intense focus on the cash flow, of course. But having a strong cash flow is a great starting point for being a multi-client company. Because what we do at TGS is we take all that cash flow and we reinvest into new projects, and we reinvest into a quite active M&A strategy. So if you look at the mid-section of this slide, this is just 3 of the recent acquisitions TGS has made in this down cycle. We bought the data library of Polarcus, we bought the data library of Dolphin, and then we just recently announced parts or a significant part of the data library of a company called Multi-Client Geophysical. So we have, over the past year and a half, we have acquired data with a book value of about $200 million just from competitors who have been facing some challenges in this climate. And then on the right side of the slide, you see the proof of our counter-cyclical investments. It's a bit hard to read, so I'm just going to explain what it says. And basically, the short story is that we're going to have 8 3D vessels active, acquiring data or TGS data during this summer. And 8 3D vessel is close to 30% of the global capacity of 3D vessels right now. So almost 1 out of 3 surveys in the world, whether that's multi-client or contract, is going to be acquired by TGS this summer. And that pays off because, first of all, if you look at the upper bar chart on the right-hand side of the slide, you see the market value of TGS now, so the equity value of TGS. And as you see, we're about 30% larger than the whole industry altogether. So you see companies such as CGG, PGS, Spectrum, ION, etc., etc. And TGS is now about 30% larger than all these companies combined. And this is because we have been, first of all, conservative in terms of our balance sheet and financials. Secondly, because we have been able to be counter-cyclical in a market that has been very challenging for most players. What it also says is that in terms of market share in multi-client sales, you see that TGS holds about 23% of the market. Our ambition is obviously to grow bigger than that, but that basically means that 1 out of 4 projects in multi-client is being either acquired by TGS or sold by TGS. I just want to spend 2 minutes talking about multi-client because there's a lot of discussions in the industry about how can service providers work closer with E&Ps. And one of the key challenges for the E&P companies when they entered into this down cycle is that there's been a significant inflation in service costs, there's been a significant inflation in internal costs. And what the service industry, or what the E&P industry has been quite good at, is now squeezing the service industry so that we have to lower our prices, we have to improve our terms, etc., etc. And that's fine. But what I want to highlight here is that the seismic companies, and especially the multi-client companies, have done a great job over many years to do this, to actually help the E&P companies with a value proposition that is very close to a win-win. And what it shows is, if you look at total seismic spending from 2010 and to 2017, you will see that it has completely changed. So if you look back on from 2010 and 2011, so we had about 38% of total seismic spending was multi-client. That has now changed to about 70%. It's 70% of a much smaller spend or much lower spend, but it's still the proportion of multi-client compared to contract, which is a dark blue. So contract has pretty much, there's not a whole lot of contract activity, to be quite honest. But that means that by shifting your spending from contract to multi-client seismic, if you can accept the fact that some other companies are also going to split the cost, means that you will have a significant cost saving just from that shift. Because if you assume that you pay about a 1/3 for multi-client compared to what you pay for a contract if you want to pay everything yourself. So if you assume that 1/3 is the cost, or 2/3 of cost saving, then you basically spend 30%. You save 30% entirely from that shift, not taking into account that you also get cheaper data from companies like ourselves, who obviously shoot cheaper data. So it's the best value proposition I can ever think of in terms of just shifting spending from contract to multi-client, and you will automatically save a lot of money. And this is what we see. We see big super majors talk about their seismic spending going down to half, but they're actually getting more data. And the reason for that is that they shift their spending from contract to multi-client. We obviously lower our price of multi-client as well, and you automatically get a significant saving. So this is an important message from you to top management. Continue to spend on multi-client, and you will save money. You will get as much data or even more data than you did back in 2013 or 14. With that, I would like to thank you again for taking the time to spend with TGS today. We're going to have a lot of exciting speakers, as I said, so I will hand it over to the next person. Thank you very much.
So our next presentation, a new approach to understanding well data on the Labrador Shelf, post-well analysis. Dr. Rachael Dale will be presenting on this, and I'm sure you'll find it riveting.
Okay. If at any point the microphone drops out, just wave a hand and then let me know, and I'll speak up. Right, so welcome. Thank you, Steve, for the introduction. So I'm just going to give a very brief history of Labrador, and drilling began in the 1970s. The hydrocarbon potential has been proven with 6 main gas discoveries and 1 sub-economic oil discovery from North Leif, which was drilled in the 1980s. Previously, all this was drilling has been confined to the shelf, but hopefully with the new licensing rounds this year, the outer shelf and slope will be explored. So last year, parcels were announced in Labrador, and there was the NL01 LS licensing round, which closes in November, I believe. And then also we have the NL02 LS licensing round, which is in 2019. Currently, as I was just saying earlier, these deep water basins are currently underexplored, but hopefully with these new licensing rounds, and from what I'll show you today, I will convince you that there is huge potential of these offshore basins. So in 2011 and 2012, and continuing on, PGS and TGS have formed a joint venture partnership in acquiring 2D seismic across the Labrador region. Previously, most of these basins were known to be present, but the extent of these weren't defined. For example, the Hopedale Basin here, which is where most of the drilling was confined to, the eastern extent was not defined. And then also the southerly Hawke Basin, the connection to the Orphan Basin in Newfoundland was previously not understood until our seismic acquisition in 2011 and 2012 opened up this connection. So to understand what is happening and why there's been several successes in Labrador and why there's been some failures in Labrador and across East Canada, we've created our post-well analysis product. This is a product which we developed in the Barents Sea many years ago, and we've transferred this over into the Gulf of Mexico, and now we've brought this to East Canada. And this has now been launched this week, so you'll be one of the few people who've seen it. And if you'd like to see it more in any of the breaks, just grab me and let me know. So what is the post-well analysis tool? So it's a ArcGIS risk analysis tool where we risk the most critical exploration success factors. We analyse both successful and dry wells, and we utilise the TGS and PGS seismic dataset, which is vast across this area. We also utilise the TGS well database that has been accumulated across East Canada. And with this, we can create a very integrated product. And these are just a few examples. So this is one of the summary pie charts that we have available for one of the wells. This is our powerful tool, which is the post-well analysis linked in with the Facies map browser. For me, I love using this tool because I can look at reservoir quality and how this is affected by Facies variations across an area. So, post-well analysis tool, you may say, oh, are we just looking at what the targeted intervals were? But we actually review the whole drilled sections. So we want to look at every prospective target. And this will then aid you in looking at analogues for these deep water areas that have not been drilled so far. So what do? We consider the reservoir, the seal, the trap, and the charge. And by doing this, we use our geological knowledge that we have of the area with our team based in London. And for this, we review geological interpretation. We have in-house basin modelers who work on this product. We have our seismic interpreters, our petrophysicists, and if we have geochemical data available, we will analyse this as well. So this is an example from Bay du Nord, and we integrate all this vast data, so it's on a vast database of about 3,000 fields. This one's taken a year for us to develop, but with the amount of people we've had involved, it's been 4 man-years worth of work. And for each interval, here you can see these nice pie charts. So for Bay du Nord, you can automatically see where the main discoveries were. And each segment of the pie represents the reservoir, trap, seal, and charge. And we rank this from 0, which is failure, to 1, which is a success. And here you can see immediately that why the Baron or Tithonian sands were successful. And you can see that there is predominantly reservoir was good, the trap was 1, the seal was 0.7, and the charge was a 1. And here it outlines whether there was any hydrocarbon columns or if there was any show data available. We also provide a summary at the bottom which just outlines whether it was a discovery, what was the main target, why it was successful or why it failed. So as I was saying earlier, we have 6 gas discoveries with 1 which is further to the north, so it's not on a map at the moment. And then we have oil discovery North Leaf IO5. So let's take a look at North Leaf. So North Leaf was found to be a sub-economic, but was an oil discovery within the Labrador region. It was targeting the Vianney sands on a tilted fault block. And from our analysis of the data, we've identified 3 Vianney sands. The Vianney sands are alluvial plain deposits, and the sands are of limited extent across the basin. Within these 3 reservoirs that we've analysed, we can see that there are variations between their successes. And so from our petrophysical analysis, we've calculated that there is an average porosity of around 16%. We've also identified that there is a potential trap, which can be seen here, and also there is potential seal with the overlying Markland Formation. We can also see here where the hydrocarbon shows have been identified, and they've only been found within Reservoir 2 and Reservoir 3 of the Vianney Formation. So we can see here that we have the reservoir, the trap, and the seal, but what about the charge? Is there a charge present? So as part of our interpretation studies, and also when we work quite closely with Tom and the rest of the team, we carry out thermal modelling. And so for this, we always want to look at try and identify a potential kitchen. And so for this, we identified that there was a depocentre to the east of the area, towards the Indian Harbour. And we identified that there is the Snorri member, which is a lacustrine Facies. And we can see that this is a proven source. And we have from our modelling, we have identified this reached the minimum depth of 3,700, which means it's within the oil window. We found from our modelling that the expulsion occurred from the late Cretaceous into the Oligocene, which again fits with why North Leith was an oil discovery. So let's take a look at a gas discovery. And this is because the gas discoveries are further north from the oil discovery. Is there a difference in the trend, and why could there be this difference? So we're going to take a look at North Biarni. And North Biarni was again targeting a basement Heim. And the difference between North Biarni and North Leith is that we can only identify one potential sand from the wireline data. And also from our petrophysical analysis, we identified that the porosity was around 12%. From reviewing the core description data and the cuttings data we have available for this Biarni interval, we can identify that the porosity has been reduced by kaolinite, quartz cement and calcite cement, which is highly indicative of these facies. So this helps us risk that reservoir, and we've risked that at a 0.4. But we know this hasn't been a problem in other wells of the Biarni formation. We also can see here we have a trap, and also we have a very good seal, which is the Markland muds. And here we can see that the segment for the seal is 1, and this shows that this is very good seal. So again, what about charge? So here you can see, this is a picture from our Facies map browser where we've integrated our seismic Facies studies with our well interpretation. And we located a depth centre for this well towards the northeast. And what we found in the northeast with this depth centre is that it reached a depth of around 7,600 metres. This means when we looked at our burial history plot, this is within the gas window. And this could suggest that you've got two main pitching areas, and one which is producing oil, and the other which is gas. So from reviewing those two wells, how can we then look at the slope region and release the potential of the region which is going to be in the next licensing round? So as part of our seismic acquisition, we also carry out interpretation studies to help TGS and also yourselves understand the regions better. And this is just a play concept diagram that we've taken from one of our studies, which is across the NL01LS licensing round. And we've identified a number of plays, and these vary in age from Upper Cretaceous, Eocene and Oligocene. These also vary from structural traps to stratigraphic traps. So we're going to take a look at going up into the Tertiary as an example. So here this is from the Upper Kenamu. And our studies have shown that the Eocene thickens into the Basin, and there are locally sand-rich packages. We've also identified a variety of traps from structural to stratigraphic. And this is just one of the examples of the leads we've identified in the region. So from identifying that there is a trap and there is a potential reservoir, what do we believe the reservoir is? So from our seismic Facies analysis, and this is just another map taken from the Eocene, we can see here that there is a lower slope to basin floor environment. We've identified a number of turbiditic sands which offer huge potential as a reservoir. But when we move further back towards the shelf, why has this interval not been successful? And immediately, this is a query that I've run in the post-well analysis and linked it in with the FMB. I can see here that there are two wells that only contain the sand. From looking at the Facies interpretation, we've identified these sort of lower shore face, and so the sands have variable extent across the shelf. And here we can see exactly which two sands that we need to look at, and we could potentially use as an analogue. So this is one of those wells. It's Leif M38, and Leif M38, as you can see here, the upper Kenamu, has a very good sand, but we're lacking several segments of the pie, and that's immediately just visual straight to you. And here we can see, this is the upper Kenamu reservoir, and this is just one of our seismic sections. And here you can see that the sand is present. We calculated a porosity of around 24% from our petrophysical analysis. But we identified that there was a lack of a migration pathway from the charge. So the charge would be within the northwest, the kitchen would be in the northwest direction. We also identified that there could be possible implications for trapping mechanism. Leif M38 is just offline, so we're not seeing the structure as well as we'd hoped, but we can get an overall view of what we think is happening. And this is just an example from the Facies map browser and the well interpretation. Here you can see this nice thick sand that we've identified in the seismic as well for the upper Kenamu. So then we move to the Oligocene. So we identified that the Eocene in the wells and why it failed in the wells. You had the sands, but there was no trapping mechanism and there was no charge. Well, what about the Oligocene further down to the basin? So looking at the lower Mokami, here you can see this nice toe thrust closure. And we also identified a number of tilted fault blocks. And on the back wall, there is a nice seismic section which shows you some of this interpretation. What is interesting about the Oligocene is that there was a huge sediment input into the basin, so this offers huge potential for reservoir sands, and also you have a huge flooding event above, which could act as a very good seal for this interval. And this is just a nice picture which outlines some nice brightening, and this is far minus near times far. And then also we've identified some stratigraphic traps. And this shows it quite nicely here how it stands out for the lower Mokami. So again, we've identified that there is potential reservoir, but what facies are these? So integrating our seismic facies analysis, again, we've identified a lower slope to basin floor environment. When we go back to the shelf, we've identified, again, very similar to what we see in the Eocene, in that a number of the sands are only located within 3 wells. And again, when we reviewed the facies analysis, this was of lower shore face deposits. So taking a look at one of these wells, we have Goodrid H55, and the lower Mokami sands were encountered in the well, and we identified 2 potential reservoirs. Immediately you can see we've ranked these as 0.4, and the reservoir has limited porosity at an average of 15%. From the cuttings data, we've identified that there is calcite cement, which would reduce the porosity. This is quite similar, as the lower shore face deposits, we can relate this to what we see in the John Dark from the North Bend Nevis well, where you have good reservoir quality sands, but immediately above there, they would be heavily cemented, and these act as baffles. And this could be potentially what's happening on the shelf here. We also identified that there is no trapping mechanism, and also there is a good seal above these reservoirs. But again, we can't identify a possible kitchen area and a migration pathway that would charge this interval. So again, up on the shelf, this has been a main factor of why the tertiary has not been successful. So we've identified that there's potential reservoir, there's a trap in the deeper basins, but what about the potential for a source? We know there is the proven source of the Biani Formation, the Snorri member, but we also have identified 2 anoxic events within the Upper Cretaceous, which is of the Markland Shale, and also the Cartwright Shale, which is Paleocene in age. So we wanted to identify if these have potential for oil. So VBPR, PGS and TGS conducted a seafloor sampling study, and over 184 gravity cores were taken. To see if there was variations in geochemical signature, we focused on 5 main regions. These are predominantly within Labrador, but we also considered the Eocene Basin. And the results showed that there was two main geochemically distinct areas, and there was a type 2 and type 3 hydrocarbons identified, which is identical to what we'd expect for the Markland and the Cartwright shale. So this suggests that these could be a potential source. But would these actually create oil? So we, as part of our studies, we then located several pseudo wells throughout the basin, and we modelled the Markland and the Cartwright of both type 2. And from this we could see, from creating our golden zones, that these two formations were buried to sufficient depths to be within the oil window. And we modelled that expulsion happened between the late Eocene to Oligocene, which would tie in with the development of the structures in the deeper water. So we proved that there is that potential sort, that potential charge, which it failed on in the wells because there was no migration pathway, but there is potential migration pathways in the deeper basins. And so here we can identify that we have these additional reservoirs. So we have the Leif member, and we also have the lower Kenamu reservoirs, which haven't been identified in the wells as successful. But we also have 3 possible sources as well, which would charge these reservoirs. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions? Okay, all right. I'll move on to, it's me again, I'm afraid. This one's quite quick, so if I can. So, my next talk, and this is just outlining what TGS has done within the Flemish Pass and the southeast Grand Banks region over the past year. So there was activity in Newfoundland with the licensing rounds in 2016 of the Orphan Basin, which was focusing on the Cape Creoles lead, and we also had the Flemish Pass licensing round as well, which proved to be very successful. We also had 2 wells drilled in the area, and there was a press release regarding Baccaloo F89, which was drilled up from Baccaloo I-78, and this is just an example from Baccaloo I-78. Baccaloo F89 was found to be a discovery, and we're waiting for that to be, the results to be announced. There was also Bay de Loup, and this was drilled to test the Bay de Nord area. And this is just a seismic example of Bay de Loup, where we have the Jurassic interval, we have a lower Cretaceous package, and then we have the upper Cretaceous, which has been removed by the base tertiary unconformity. Again, there's been no more announcements, but we're waiting. Basin Servitude are waiting for all these results to be announced, and I'm sure you are as well. So just an overview of what TGS does with all our seismic data that Tom and the team and Steve go towards acquiring. So using our seismic data, we then carry out seismic interpretation and also Facies analysis to create a regional sequence stratigraphic interpretation of the area. This is just an example from our East Canada Facies map browser, and it can be divided up into a Labrador Sea interpretation, a Newfoundland interpretation, and we're in the process, we've completed Southeast Grand Banks Phase 1, but we're in the process of creating the whole Southeast Grand Banks Facies map browser, which will extend across this region. We also have the East Canada post-well analysis product, which I've just talked through. And also we have 2 prospectivity reports, with one that is focusing on the NL01LS, and this uses our 2014 seismic that was acquired in the region. So in 2013 to 2014, we completed our Newfoundland sequence stratigraphic interpretation, and we linked this in with our Labrador Sea interpretation, and from our knowledge from Newfoundland, we then updated Labrador. And then in 2016, based on the new wells that were released, such as Bay du Nord and Harpoon and Marjorie, from client feedback and our client funders, we then added these into the interpretation. We also then updated based on this additional knowledge. And this is just an example from well panel, which is within the Facies map browser, where you have the 3rd order sequences, the wireline data, which our petrophysical team go in and they clean up the data, and then also we carry out our Facies interpretation. And then this is just an example of our seismic interpretation across Bay du Nord. We then also undertook a Southeast Grand Banks interpretation study, which covered the Carson Basin, the Horseshoe Basin, South Bank High, South Whale Basin, and the Salar Basin. And this was using the 2014 seismic that was acquired. At the moment, we've only focused on this area to gain our knowledge in the area for the 2019 licensing round, but we're hopefully going to update this later in the year to include a full Facies analysis across the area. The data set at the moment includes 16 wells, and these are all upon the shelf. So as part of our sequence stratigraphic studies, we always go in and create these nice stratigraphic charts. And for Grand Banks, at the moment, we're using a combination of Nova Scotia and also John Dark nomenclature. This is what's currently used by the board. With our other FMBs and with East Canada, whenever there's a new nomenclature being released and is being used by industry, we then go back and we update this. As part of our sequence stratigraphic study, we interpreted over 20 second-order sequences across the area. And again, some of these can be found very localised, and then some others, such as the base tertiary, is much more widespread across the whole interval. So I'm just going to show you some of our results from our seismic interpretation study. And here you can see this is the Carson Basin, and this is where the 2019 licensing round will be. Here you can see some nice thick Jurassic packages, and then as you move off into the Salar Basin, these thick Jurassic packages are also present. We also have nice early Cretaceous sediments and also late Cretaceous sediments. What we see in the Salar Basin and we see everywhere else across Newfoundland is that we have these huge thick tertiary packages. Particularly in this section here, you can't see on this image, but there are some nice prograding incliniforms going deep into the basin. This is an example from the South Bank High to the Salar Basin. And here you can see up on the South Bank High, it's very thin packages of sediment. And this is where the base tertiary interval is, which is marked in orange. And then as you move further out into the Salar Basin, we can see here again some nice Jurassic sequences, and then we can also identify the nice big Cretaceous packages. And these can also be the wells from Newfoundland can also be used as analogues for this region. And this is another example, which is going from north in the Carson Basin down to the south. And again, we're seeing very similar structures with these nice Jurassic structures and Cretaceous, but here, which you notice the striking difference to what we've seen further north, is you're having a thicker upper Cretaceous package. So as part of our interpretation studies, we review leads within the area, and here we've identified a Jurassic play, which we've been able to use analogues from the Jeanne d'Arc Basin, and say this is interbedded carbonates and clastics. And these are a Voyager formation equivalent. We've also identified Cretaceous plays, and this is a Ben Nevis equivalent, and it's on this nice structure here. And we've also identified several stratigraphic plays, and this is of the Thorvald equivalent sands. So if you're not familiar with the Thorvald, these are tertiary sands that are coming into the basin from the Bonavista Vista platform. There was a PhD thesis written on these sands, and you can map these out in the Jeanne d'Arc, but we've also seen equivalent sands in Labrador and in the Northern Basin. So there's obviously a big global event of this sands being input into the basin at the time. And this is just a bit more detailed and how bright these potential leads stand out. So we've identified several play concepts in southeast Grand Banks, and we've identified structural traps, and we've also identified a number of stratigraphic traps. And hopefully we'll be able to carry on our interpretation in the southeast Grand Banks area and be able to unlock this potential, ready for the 2019 and the 2020 licensing rounds. So, to be continued in 2017, that was a very brief overview of what we've done in the area. And in 2017, I know Steve will be talking about the seismic acquisition plans. And also, as part of our interpretation studies, we're updating that. So, based on our new seismic data, we're updating our Labrador Sea Facies map browser, which will be ready within August in time for the licensing rounds. And this will provide a very regional overview of the basin. And also, we're looking at the moment for pre-funders for the Southeast Grand Banks Facies map browser, which will incorporate all this seismic data, and also with the new seismic tie lines of Tidal Wells, which was acquired in 2016. This releases this potential of the area. And said it was brief, and it is very brief, but that's just a brief overview of what we've done in TGS during 2016. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yeah.
You seem to miss the ODP well in your Salar presentation.
Yes, we do have it. And we did actually model the ODP well. We did our basin model, as I didn't have much time to present, but I can go into the ODP well in great detail, but we did use that to model a Turonian source, and then we've now integrated that into the rest of our studies to prove the potential in the area. Any other questions? Okay, great, thank you very much. I'll pass you back over to Steve.
Thank you, Rachel. So now we can switch gears a little bit from interpretation to something that's probably even more fun, and that's seismic processing. Our next presentation is going to deal with a project that we currently have in place. It's a Labrador Sea 2D reprocessing. The gentleman that's going to be presenting it is probably arguably nobody has more experience processing Eastern Canada data than Joseph.
Thank you, Steve, and thanks for calling seismic processing fun. I always call it sport, but there's different opinions on things sometimes. Okay, welcome everyone. No problem. Okay, so this presentation is just outlining the scope of what we're trying to do. Talk a little bit about the processing flow, showing some examples before and after, what that looks like, and a quick summary. Oops. Okay, so this is a map of the 2D lines on the east coast. This is a year old, so it might not contain everything. But what we're attempting here is looking at the Labrador Sea That's the project area. So it's a whole grid, a dense grid in the central area, and then a sparser grid around that. And so just let's have a look and add more detail in that area. So this is the actual project area we're working on. Still hard to hear.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. I know it's heavy for you. I realize it's heavy for you, but we're going to persevere.
Do you want me to get you a microphone stand?
No, it's okay. It's okay. You could hold the microphone for me. Okay, so is that better?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So this is the project area. The color code outlines the water depth here. Between blue colors is in the shallow, about 200 milliseconds. Now we processors talk about milliseconds, not about depth. And the deeper part is almost 5 seconds deep. So you can see how the shelf falls down here and how the water depth changes with it. A bit more detail again, and a bit more detail about the project. So this was acquired with our partner PGS, so it's all geostreamer data. It was acquired between 2011 and 2015, so it's a bit of a mix in terms of acquisition and processing, even though the actual acquisition parameters were kept the same. It's about 20,000 line kilometers. Because it was acquired and processed right afterwards, the actual processing applied is somewhat inconsistent throughout the vintages. So what we did, we picked a test line from the 2012 season in this case, and started reprocessing that test line in 2016. And this is the line that was chosen to be reprocessed. And after looking at the first results of that reprocessing, we started to reprocess the whole area, the whole dense grid of 3 lines at the end of 2016, and this includes time and depth imaging. So what we're trying to do, and I think everyone's familiar with the scope of project in seismic reprocessing, it's pretty much always the same. We want better demultiple, we want improved signal noise, better imaging, we want to be AVO compliant, and we have a deadline to deliver this in end of June, early July 2017, so it's very close. And we're in the late stages of this. So looking at this line, this is legacy data we're having in the library right now, and the problems are quite obvious. Right? Going down the shelf, we have the imaging completely breaks down. We're covered in multiple energy. Further down, there's residual and multiple, and covering fairly complex geology. And deeper down, where we typically see the target areas, we lose a lot of the events we would like to map and to image. So what has changed in terms of processing? A quick outline. I'm not going to talk about the details of any processing field here. No one's really interested. That's not the right venue for that. But what generally has changed is that we're running different noise attenuation. It's a bit more sophisticated. The signal processing that has been applied was really relying on the acquisition, on the geostreamer data to deal with the receiver girls. We're adding, in this case, because it is geostreamer, the source ghosting into that. The multiple attenuation has changed significantly. What we used before was a tau decon approach, and now we're using shallow water demultiple, including a more sophisticated subtraction scheme. The residual demultiple that always applied after our main demultiple has changed as well, and we added some apex shifted demultiple onto that, which is important at the shelf break, where we see a lot of rugosity. Noise attenuation, again, we're running more sophisticated algorithms on that. The velocity analysis has been improved. We're adding some auto-picking fairly early in the game, and it's then structural velocity analysis that considers the actual dip components in the data set. From isotropic imaging, we're going into anisotropic imaging. Not a big difference in terms of imaging 2D lines, but it does place the fault planes a bit better. And then for residual demultiple noise, we still need to do that and work on the residual noise, but we're adding some inverse Q correction as well to help us with the frequency content of data set. So I'm going to show you some examples. for all that I just mentioned. So this is first of all that test line I mentioned before. Let's have a quick look through this test line. And so this is what the root stack looks like for that test line. You understand now why the resulting seismic section I showed earlier in the legacy data has all these problems. Because I mean, we have these really strong multiple coming down the shelf. We have some water bottom porosity exactly in that area, so the multiple here is completely distorted, and it's hard to remove. The residual multiple here is covering a really weak area that's heavily faulted, and down here we're cutting through the target areas and some structural sections. So what we're doing is quickly going through the deghosting stage, so we're broadening the bandwidth of the data set, then applying the main demultiple, and you can see it does a good job going from this to that, but you can also see that a lot of residual multiple is left in the section. And then we're running through, this is a pre-migration stack, so this is pretty much the end product where we clean everything up before we go into migration, follow up, and more residual demultiple and clean up. If you compare this section to the legacy, you can see immediately how much improvement we were able to achieve through this. And I go back and forth just a couple times. So this is what we're having now, and this is what was there before. And you can see how severe the residual contamination with multiple content in this section actually is. Let's zoom in to illustrate that further. So this is what we have now with the base tertiary coming through, getting weaker on the left here, but still being fairly continuous with a lot of structural components coming in, stacking in here. If you compare the legacy, you can see the problems and how much of these events were actually removed and damaged through processing when the line was processed in 2012. It's always good to look at gathers. We do that all the time. We want to preserve AVO. We want to use AVO to analyze the data set. This is again the raw gathers with all the multiples in there. You can see how hard and how strong they come in. Source deghosting, first round of main demultiple, additional radon and apex shifted demultiple. Now we can see the prime is actually showing up, and there's still some residual noise left, and now we clean it up further. And these are the gathers that go into migration. Compare that back to the legacy gathers to see how different they are through this new processing flow. The final migrated stack, this is what we're having now. The base tertiary is visible all the way up. We still have some complex faulting that's not resolved in here, but it will be almost impossible to do that with 2D. And we have fairly good structure and dip components deeper down in the section here at target levels. This is, in comparison, legacy. Go back and forth a couple of times. So the main aim for us is to image those sub-basins and the structures down here, and you can see how hard the interpretation would be using the seismic like this. A quick look at the gathers. Again, specifically in the shallow part, the gathers are heavily contaminated, even post-migration, with residual multiple and noise. And I'll quickly show you another line, a strike line, just to give you a flavor what that looks like. This is actually a line that was processed in 2015. And for us, reprocessing is always a challenge. What can we do with a line that's actually fairly new? Can we improve that as well? And this is the line, 3059X. This is the legacy migration. The pre-migration stack, so that's where we are right now with processing. And we compare this to what we have now, so legacy and what we have now. A bit hard to see, it's the full line, these lines are fairly long, so it's hard to see details, so let's focus in and zoom in into the highs here. And it's quite obvious, and specifically when you compare, that these multiple trends are although there's a lot of added noise with the residual multiple. And this is what we have now. So we were able, even the line was processed only a couple of years ago, we were able to remove a lot of that residual noise and have better continuity down in the deeper part of the section. The spectral shape here on the side just shows you that we are actually broadening the wavelet, which was part of that. We are aligning all the wavelets and trying to have a very consistent data set that can be used for interpretation and radio analysis. Another look on the left-hand side of that line. Again, here's the legacy data. All that crisscross that's in here is residual multiple that has been migrated and moved, and somewhat coherency filtered. And now we're going to the reprocessing. You can see that actually the underlying signal starts to show up, and we'll be able to produce a better image and better fault definition here. Okay, in summary, it's always a long way when you go to reprocessing, getting a bit closer now. And we do see the improvements in terms of signal noise, imaging, signal processing. That means you have a broader wavelet. We see typically more uplift on the older vintages and less uplift on the newer vintages, which is to be expected. We still have unresolved out-of-plane events, so 2D can image so much, and in the end of the day, the detailed imaging has to be done with a 3D acquisition. And we had to modify the processing flow a little bit from that test line that had very good results, but it's a bit different to the vintages, and secondly, strike lines react differently to processing than dip lines, specifically at the shelf point. But overall, it's looking really bright, and we are on track, and we think we can deliver the time and depth products as promised in early July. Thank you.
So I know everybody's probably been waiting for this presentation with well logs, where the rubber meets the road. Because I guess as a geophysicist, I've always looked at this, and I was dealing with squiggly lines forever and forever, and then the idea that you can actually put a drill bit and actually improve on the seismic. Imagine that. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Steve Allen. He's the International Sales and Business Development Manager for TGS.
So what I wanted to start off with was just a little bit of background. I mean, TGS has invested a significant amount of money, time, and resources in trying to gather well data. And by well data, we mean wireline logs and reports. And this investment is an ongoing effort for us, in that we are constantly trying to acquire rights to data from as many countries as possible. And as you can see from the map there, we currently have data from about 33 countries around the world. We've got over 8 million well logs scanned in our library, over 1 million immediately available LAS files. And this is probably the largest commercial library of its type. But this effort is an ongoing one, and we're all about trying to get data not just available, but available in a format and in a convenient way for you guys to get on with your work. So we started off years ago, and much of the data was then analog, so we would have to scan data. These days, a lot of it's already digital, so we're actually reading the data in, but it all requires images to be indexed and classified. It requires those images to be cleaned up. And then we move on to vectorizing the data or digitizing the data to produce digital curves, QC that data, clean it up, and make it available to you guys through our web portal software, Logline Plus and R360, in order to download it 24/7 onto your desktop, so that you can get on with doing your interpretation work without having to do a lot of repetitive cleaning up of the data. So when we talk about international well data, unlike the US onshore, we tend to talk about well packages. This is something that we kind of developed as a concept, so that rather than selling piecemeal curves, or individual logs or data. We would rather sell you the entire well package. And that could be all of the scanned images of the logs and all of the curves digitized, but also a cleaned up set of log data that we refer to as LAS Plus or interpretation ready data. And this data has been standardized so that it's repeatable. So we use the same guidelines whether we're talking about data in Canada or data in Portugal or Spain or any other place. We follow the same guidelines, so what you get is consistent. We also will try and standardize on the mnemonics, and we'll make sure that the data is depth matched as well. So we'll take the gamma ray from the deep resistivity tool typically and use that as a way of depth matching all the curves. We'll also splice the logs together to give you continuous log runs. And we'll also edit the data for you. So we'll get rid of bad hole data, cased intervals, etc. And finally, as an extra version of data, we'll create hybrid curves. And these hybrid curves are an attempt to create a tight curve from surface to TD, or as much of the log interval as possible. So we may be taking a gamma ray from an LWD or an MWD, splice it onto gamma rays from a density neutron or a sonic, in order to give you a curve from as big an interval as possible. Now, of course, if you don't like the way we've done these work, that's fine. You can go back to the previous edited versions, and if you don't like that, you can go back to the previous standard LAS. So by providing data as a package, you get everything from us so that you don't have to necessarily pick and choose what to digitize or what to use. You have everything. The other thing that we do as a matter of course now for all our international data is collect reports. In the early days, this was very much overlooked. We were focused on one-line logs and only logs. But these days, we try and collect the reports. And reports would typically be as scanned images, PDF files, and they would very often include core analysis, final well reports, geophysical data, velocity data, check shots, directional surveys, etc. Now, they're not always available. A lot of the stuff we get in places like West Africa, we didn't collect that data, and sometimes it's difficult to go back and get it. But wherever we can, we're now collecting that information. And what do we do with all this data? Well, we're trying to build more and more products that are going to help you get your work done. So one of the products that we started creating is a directional survey data, or DS+. And what we do typically here is that we'll first off look at the entire borehole sequence. And that may involve actually drawing up a schematic that shows which sidetracks were drilled off which borehole segment. And once we've done that, we can then look at all of the directional surveys we have and attribute them to the correct borehole segment. And only by doing that can you ultimately splice the right surveys together to give you a proper well path. So having done the schematic and selected the surveys, we'll pick the best survey for each borehole segment. We'll get that data digitized, including the header, the depths, the dips, the azimuths, and then we'll run it through our own internal program that calculates the offsets and compares those to the offsets reported on the report. And only when we're satisfied that we're actually calculating the right well path will we actually release the data as a directional survey. So we're talking about spatially corrected and validated data here, and that will very often create directional surveys for multiple boreholes that originally we didn't think existed until we look at the whole sequence. The format of the data typically would be an ASCII file, or we also support industry standards like WITS-ML and UCOA. As part of the directional survey project, though, we discovered, as I mentioned, that very often the actual number of boreholes that exist in the well is sometimes more than has ever been reported or acknowledged. And because of the way the API numbers are created, this can very often lead to misnaming of data and data being incorrectly assigned to an incorrect API number. So we initiated a project called the Validated Wellheader Project, where we'll actually look at multiple information sources, as many as 40 different documents, and we'll actually build that schematic, assign, extract all of the header information that we can in terms of the KB elevations, the depths, casing, bed sizes, etc., and try and build a much more accurate validated wellheader so that we can actually see the correct drilling sequence involved and the apportionment of those correct API numbers to those borehole sequences. And what emerges in some cases is that not only are there borehole segments that have been overlooked or incorrectly named, but sometimes even the surface location is off. So until you actually get that information right, everything else you do is just a waste of time. As I mentioned, there are up to 44 different items that get used in this process, and they would include things like the permits, the plats, completion reports, drilling reports, and a whole bunch of other data that we incorporate in order to try and get consistency. Another valuable set of data that we try and extract as well is check shot survey data. So again, we'll look at a number of different possible sources. They could be seismic calibration logs, they could be a check shot survey itself, even a VSP. And we'll actually try and build a spreadsheet file that contains the depths and the times. And as far as possible, we'll capture as much as we can. So there'll be header information to tell you what the source of the data was, but also we'll create depths in measured depth and TBD if it exists. We'll have raw times and corrected times if they exist. And we'll have the data in seconds, milliseconds, two-way time, one-way time, etc. So again, we're trying to build files that you can use. We're not attempting to make decisions as to whether this data is necessarily accurate. All we can do is to make sure that what you get is exactly what's on the report. And then you can use that to make your own decision. Another data set that we've started increasingly to look at is the mudlog data. So initially this was a project to digitize the curve data from mudlogs. So typically this would be the rate of penetration, the total gas, C1, C2, C3, C4 gas curves. But we now also extend that to include any gamma ray on the mudlogs, weight on bit, and even shows data if it can be portrayed as a curve. So that product is routinely created for everything we do in Eastern Canada and a lot of places in the US, and it's certainly something that's becoming increasingly popular as people are realizing the value of this of the mudlogs themselves. As a spin-off from that, we've also been asked to start capturing the lithology data from the mudlog, and again this would be represented as an LAS curve with the lithology lithotype as the curve type and the value as a percentage. So you can then take the mud representation on the mudlog, the lithology, and put that into a file as well. And if required, we can also then capture all of the comments and cuttings information, put that into a spreadsheet as well. But those tend to be more specialized and very labor intensive, so tend not to be requested that often. Finally, we've been looking at what we could do with VSP data. There's a lot of wells that have VSPs reported, but we only get the scanned image. So we've been experimenting with vectorizing that data back into a SegWi format. We have spoken to a few companies that have expressed interest in getting this as an additional product as well. Okay, so that was a kind of summary of the products that we're creating. If we look specifically at offshore Eastern Canada, as I mentioned, we have a basic well package here that would include the wireline log images, the LAS and the LAS Plus, and then optional products would be the validated well header, the directional surveys, check shot surveys, mud LAS, etc. We also have been offering companies the option to be able to take a complete bundle so that whenever we can get that data, we would actually automatically produce it. And this approach is particularly good for newly released wells so that people can budget for the number of wells being released this year, and they know that they're going to pay a fixed price. And it helps us too because we know we've got an order in the pocket to actually go ahead and get that work done. If you look at the figures though, we've got here, I won't necessarily run through them, but Newfoundland we've got about 423 wells, and if you actually look at the database as a whole, there's about 703 wells that are immediate LAS and LAS Plus, 562 reports, etc. It's quite an extensive database. It's one that we're keeping up to date all the time, so as new wells are released, we're automatically getting all these products created. But the other The other work we're doing is a kind of background legacy infill project. So we're constantly going back and collecting additional reports, additional logs which are emerging for some of the wells that were previously released. And in particular, we're finding that a lot of the specialist reports and certainly all the geophysical data like check shots, VSPs, etc., are designated as Category 2 in Newfoundland. So these can be up to 5 years after the well is originally released. So even though we know a check shot exists, we can't actually get that data maybe for 5 years until the wells, until the Category 2 data comes up. So we're constantly doing this updated maintenance work, and we actually are always updating our files in that sense. Because I'm dealing with the well logs, I get an opportunity here to be able to actually span and fill the gap now between what's happening in the eastern Canada Atlantic margin right the way across to Europe. And we can span that gap with these deep water borehole data, which you may otherwise know as DSDP or ODP, IODP. We began a project some years ago where we were trying to collect this data, perhaps naively assuming that they all had wireline logs, but in reality only about 10% ran wireline logs. But what we did instead is that we looked at every single borehole. We filtered out any borehole that didn't recover core of Pliocene or older age, and those that did, we constructed a digital composite log by taking data which we considered to be relevant to oil and gas exploration. So we would build a composite log that contained lithology, stratigraphy, the core analysis data, the core gamma ray, any wireline logs that were run, geochemistry data, deposition environment. And all this data was put onto a color PDF plot, but we also output it all as an LAS file so you can read it into your applications. So of the 197 boreholes that were reviewed across the North Atlantic, there were 146 that had Pliocene or older sediment, and of those 30 had wireline logs. And this data set was originally packaged as a complete package with a GIS interface, and then more recently we've allowed people to buy them individually so they can cherry pick the boreholes that they want. And as of this month, we're going to be offering a subscription deal, so people could actually subscribe to the entire global database on an annual fee and be able to dip into it whenever you want, download the data. And at the end of the subscription, you can choose whether to keep the data and purchase it, or whether you actually want to just hand it back as being no longer of interest to you. So I mentioned that we're now crossing over to the other side of the Atlantic. As part of our global data sets, we've been trying to gather data in Portugal and Spain. Both countries have proved to be a little bit of a challenge. Spain, we have an agreement with the ministry there under which we can request and acquire any of the released wells, which we can then digitize and process and deliver to clients. In Portugal, it's a little bit more complex. We can purchase the data and then produce our value-added products, the LAS+, DS+, etc. But unfortunately, the Portuguese ministry also require that the client license the underlying raw data as well. So in effect, we're only selling the value-added data. But that pretty much covers a quick overview of the well data. Do you have any questions? Otherwise, I'll pass on to the next speaker.
So my name is Sindre Jansen. I work in project development in Asker in Norway, just outside Oslo. I have these last 2 years my main focus has been working in Portugal, trying to build projects there for ahead of the expected license round. The title of my presentation is shown here: Newfoundland, Ireland, Portugal, crossing the Atlantic margin. This is the outline, and what I'll do is I'll give a brief introduction to the conjugate margin setting and pull some examples from Flemish Pass, Porcupine Basin, and also Porto Basin and Peniche Basin in Portugal. Last, I'll give you a summary. So Flemish Pass has relatively recent years experienced great success with several high-impact Jurassic oil discoveries. The recent license round in Porcupine Basin, this was announced in February last year, highlighted a great industry interest towards similar play types to what we see in the conjugate margin here at Flemish Pass. Mesozoic reconstruction highlights that the third piece of this puzzle is then the Port of old western coast of Portugal, western margin of Portugal. Here we see a reconstruction at early Cretaceous, and it does highlight the close proximity of these three areas. And based on this observation here, it's fair to assume that we might expect similarities, or big similarities, within these three areas. On the left-hand side here, I'm showing two examples, or two seismic lines going through Missen, Bay du Nord, and the Harpoon discovery in Flemish Pass, and all of these discoveries have been made in pre-Rift Jurassic fault blocks. Yeah. If we look at Porcupine Basin, we see similar structures with massive rotated fault blocks, Jurassic rotated fault blocks. Oh, sorry. And also down in Portugal, at in Flemish Basin, Porto Basin, we see similar pre-rift structures. This map here is quite. Is my reconstruction. It's not. It's not. I don't think it deserves to be in a paper or anything, but it illustrates how the database, the 2D database that TGS holds, is good for connecting or pulling information from each of these areas and pulling that over to the other areas. Then it should be fairly correct, but not on a well, tens of kilometers scale or hundreds of kilometers. I'll focus now more on Flemish Pass in Newfoundland. This yeah, we have seen a lot of good presentations and examples from this area already. So this is definitely not my home terrain, but I'll show a couple of examples from some seismic lines through the discoveries here. First, I want to look at the license map from 2013. What we saw at that point was that there had been one big oil discovery, which was the Missen. And that year, two other big discoveries came in, which was the Harpoon and Bay du Nord discoveries. If you compare that to present-day license map, we see, well, basically a massive increase in licenses, exploration licenses in the Flemish Pass, and I believe this is quite a lot associated with the success that these previous discoveries gave us. Here I'm showing a seismic example through the Missen discovery. This has been pulled from post-well analysis that Rachael presented earlier. This discovery was made in late Jurassic Whidden formation. Yeah, we see the structure. We see rotated fault block here, Jurassic age, and this seismic example here goes through the Bay du Nord, where we are looking at the rotated anticlinal feature. Similar reservoir here with the late Jurassic Whidden sandstone formation. Okay, so now I'll move over to Porcupine Basin. This is an area with, let's say, quite sparse data coverage, and we definitely see that there's good, well, there's very good, there's big advantage of actually being able to utilize the information that has been obtained in the Newfoundland Flemish area and pull that over to the Porcupine Basin. Again, I'm comparing licenses from 2013. We see relatively sparse licenses. At this point, there had been drilled a well in 1988, which was, let's see here if I can point. which has been drilled up in the northwestern part there, 43-13-1. The well showed had shows in the upper Jurassic sands, and then in 2013 the Duncan North well was drilled, and this well had shows indicating that the structure there, which was carbonate reservoir, overpressure carbonate reservoir, had at some point been filled, and that the size of this was equivalent to relatively, well, approximately 600 million barrels. Comparing this map to the present-day license map, we see again a massive increase in exploration licenses. This year there will be one well drilled, which is the 53-6A1, shown here. This well is testing lower Cretaceous and Paleocene fan deposits. It's gonna spud in 15th of June, so this will be a very interesting well. Also, there are several other wells coming up, which is, among others, this Duncan South well that you see. This is quite similar structure to the Duncan North well, which, to the Duncan North well. Yeah, here I'm just showing where we are acquiring a 3D this year, which is the 3D or a green 3D. 600 squares, 6,000 squares. Okay, so this is a seismic line going through the Flemish Pass and Ireland. It looks like one seismic line. I think it's a very nice example, highlighting the similarities in these two basins. We see again this rotated fault box, which has had a lot of success on the western coast of in Flemish, and then we see similar structures in Porcupine Basin. We also see later infill of these Paleocene fans and also Cretaceous and Paleocene fans. This here we highlight the different plate types from the Porcupine Basin. Rotated fault blocks, Jurassic rotated fault blocks, and then this subsequent basin infill where we see good indications of fan deposits. Yeah, this is a light seismic line crossing through the Porcupine Basin, and let's see, I'll see that. But again, we see this rotated fault blocks, and we see potential for carbonate buildup, and also evidence of fans in both the Cretaceous and also into the Paleocene. Here we're looking at an arbitrary line. So this arbitrary line is cutting through the Duncan North well that was drilled in 2013. It's also going into the Duncan South well, which possibly will be drilled in 2020. And on the left side here, we see that it's going into the Druid and Drumbeck prospects, which will spud now June 15th. We also see that the intervals where we believe the well is targeting, which is the Cretaceous fan and the Paleocene fan. Okay, so now we'll move down to Portugal. Offshore Portugal can be subdivided into 6 main basins. It's I don't have a pointer, but in the northeastern part we have the Porto Basin, and then we see west extending quite far south. We have the Peniche Basin. Here we have the Lusitanian Basin extending onshore. In the southwest we have the Alentejo and Sagres basins, and south we have the Algarve Basin. 27 offshore wells have been drilled, all predominantly drilled on Jurassic carbonate platforms at shallower depths and roughly 540 meters. 6 of these wells have yielded hydrocarbon shows. Recently, the Portuguese authorities has announced an expected license round in Porto and Peniche Basin, and we see here we see where these expected licenses are. So now I'll go a bit in detail on the well here. Lula-1 well. This is a well that I believe is a very important well for exploration in Portugal. This well is situated in the northernmost part of the Porto Basin, northwest, just at the boundary from the shallow carbonate platform out into the deeper Peniche Basin. It targeted the upper to mid-Jurassic carbonate platform, and it had oil shows. These oil shows had a different oil signature compared to the other wells that were drilled in the area. And this fact is quite important to us because what this gives us indications of is that there's potentially a source situated further offshore in the deeper Peniche Basin, which is generating hydrocarbons and migrating hydrocarbons up to this Lula-1 well. In 2000 and 2002, TGS acquired in excess of 22,000 kilometers of 2D data offshore Portugal. This data, all of this data was reprocessed last year and delivered. I did, I did QC on this. This data, this reprocessed data, shows us or gives us the possibility to tie in this tie in the well information from the shallow platform and bring this knowledge out into the deeper basins. What I was also very happy to see was that this seismic or the reprocessed data also gave us very good indications of hydrocarbon presence. To get good hydrocarbon indicators, and I'll show you examples of that. First, here we have a seismic example going from the Lusitanian Basin out into the Peniche Basin across the Berlenga High. What we see here is a lot of multiples ringing through the data, and the seismic imaging here was very difficult on the original or the vintage data. Here's the example of the reprocessed data, and it highlights that it's a lot easier now to actually do interpretation in these shallow areas up in the Lusitanian Basin, and also then try and bring that knowledge out into the deeper Peniche Basin. Here we zoom in, and this structure here was actually drilled, and looking at the original data, we see that you see that it's very difficult to actually define the structure here. Whereas the reprocessed line, it highlights, it's a lot easier to do an interpretation of this. This is a seismic line out in the Peniche Basin. This was a very interesting line we'll do QC on. What we see, so this is the original line, and here we have the reprocessed line. And what we see here up in the shallow part is very good indications of hydrocarbons. And we also see that above these Jurassic rotated fault blocks, which is a very good indication to us about the source rock presence here, and also that there's an active source. Looking at the far near far volume, we see that there is a clear AVO response associated with these structures, and also we see that there's a clear AVO response coming out in the Cretaceous here. This is another seismic example from the Peniche Basin. We see clear amplitude cutoffs along the faults here. We see fault blocks, and if we put on interpretation, we can start to see similarities of structures. For example, for the Baden or Jurassic faulted anticline. So now I'm going to give you a summary. Porcupine Basin in West Coast Portugal represents conjugate margins to Flemish Pass and Southeast Grand Banks. Reconstruction at early Cretaceous age allows us to assume that there are great similarities between these areas, and seismic and well observations confirms this assumption. Major oil discoveries in Flemish has spiked a massive exploration interest in Porcupine Basin and also in Portugal. In 2016, the TGS database there was reprocessed, and the reprocessing showed a significant uplift in the imaging quality. And on the data, we've been able to identify many new leads that we were not able to identify earlier, and we were also able to identify amplitude anomalies that seems to be indicative of source and potentially hydrocarbon presence. So that's it for me. I just want to say thank you to the GPSI team, or small part of it, Alex Birch, Rachel, James Clark, and Roberta, for helping me with many examples. And then also I want to thank the PD Asker team. Thank you.
Any questions for Sindre? It's a very interesting presentation. Thank you. That was very well done. Thank you. So our next presentation, Northeast Atlantic Margin, Mature to Frontier Insights, presented by Will Bradbury.
Okay. I'm going to talk about the Northeast Atlantic Margin and try and pick out a few insights that we have from a very mature side and a very frontier side. So Sindre was talking about what we, I think, fairly consider a frontier-to-frontier conjugate margin, where we're trying to build knowledge across, and in actual fact what you saw from the database is that it's probably more possible to bring knowledge across from the Newfoundland to Labrador side over into the Porcupine, Portugal. But if we move up into the Northeast Atlantic Margin, and we look at this area, what we see is a considerable amount of data that we have sitting on the Norwegian side up here. So we're looking at the Barents Sea, and then we go down into the Norwegian Sea, west of Shetland, and then this is just the top of Scotland right here. And we have, we're very data rich on this margin, not just in terms of 2D and 3D seismic, but also in terms of considerable other data types, EM data, and so on and so on. But when we look across the margin over here, this is more of a challenging area to gather data. So back in '95, some of this started with seismic acquisition, and then in 2008, TGS went up here and flew airborne surveys, gravity and magnetics, and so on. And we also started off doing a 2D seismic acquisition program. 2D for these couple of reasons here. We have a lot of ice. It's extremely challenging to work up here. So what you can see is the Finnish icebreaker also escorting 2D seismic vessel, in this case Academic Lazarev, and she's towing a 6 kilometre long cable through the ice. There's no tail buoy on this. It's a sort of sea anchor arrangement. And of course, we're flying the helicopter here, so you're looking at good conditions, good weather conditions, and actually relatively easy ice conditions to operate in. So we take that database, and we need to start building up more of our knowledge in that area. So we're going to look to the Norwegian margin to see what we can bring over to increase our understanding of the prospectivity in this region. So we have obviously plenty of data here to look at restorations and reconstructions across the margin. So when we do that, we can have a look, and here we're back in about 55 million years ago, and we put northeast Greenland, which is this section here. We put it back against the Barents Sea, and then the Norwegian Sea over here. And now we can start to look at this as we probably should be looking at it in terms of this is one piece of geology, and we need to try and figure out how we move our understanding back and forth. Now, really what we're after is the trapped source, reservoir, and hydrocarbons, and that's what the objective of what we're trying to do here. But we go back to our restoration in this case, and then we can start looking at some of the gravity data, and we can start looking at the basins and highs and how they compare across this margin when we do the reconstruction. So if we go over to northeast Greenland, and we just pick out one example here on the northern edge of this gravity high. We have, in this case, just in this area, just one line going across, and we see the gravity high here, and we understand that there's probably some complexity in that area, but is this something that we're particularly interested in this case? Well, if we go back across to Norway and And this time we go up to the Barents Sea, and we look at this piece here is called the Westernmoy High. And we look in that, then we're down in this location, and what we've actually got in here is this is normal faulted Cretaceous sediments, and then again Jurassic sediments in that. And it's been an area where there's been lots of licensing activity. A few wells drilled, but certainly an area that's been of interest to the exploration industry. This is probably telling us that we need to go back over here and we need to acquire more data. So we're trying to use that knowledge to understand where and how we need to explore in Northeast Greenland. I'll come back to these areas now as well when we start to talk about traps. So we're in the Barents Sea here, and this is the Lopper High, which we can see just here. And then a series of fault blocks that come off, and these are great Jurassic tilted fault blocks. They've proven to be very, very prospective, and there's been some significant discoveries coming down in these terrace fault blocks in this area. So if people are familiar with Stratigraphic, this was a very high impact well that occurred in the Barents Sea. If we take our understanding of this area and we go back across the margin again, and we're going to look at another transect, comes from Northeast Greenland, we put in our interpretation as we understand it. We're looking here based on things like seismic Facies analysis to try and understand where we are in the interpretation. Then we can see quite clearly a whole series of Jurassic age fault blocks that are coming down, and part of this as well incorporates information from seafloor sampling, where we're able to make more positive stratigraphic ties to try and tie in our interpretation of this area. So we certainly have traps up there. When it comes to reservoir and looking for sandstones, then again we have a number of tools that we can use. And we're just looking at a section here from the Jurassic. When it comes to reservoir sandstones, we have seafloor samples. So in some cases there is towards the north there's a significant amount of uplift, and we can start to get to actually some of the reservoir sandstones that we want to have a look at. We also can sample onshore Greenland. So the east coast has a lot of exhumed Jurassic sediments up there that we can take a look at as well. And then we have seismic analogues going across the margin to Norway that we can use as well. So we can get relatively good information in building up a stratigraphic column when it comes to the reservoir rocks. Of course, the same tools help us when it comes to shales and trying to understand source rock and so on. But we'll come back to source rock in a minute. So we spent all of our time now trying to push knowledge from Norway into Northeast Greenland so that we can get a better understanding of the prospectivity, of course. This is all license round driven work, which is why the focus has been in that regard. But we can also actually just take some of the frontier knowledge and put it back into the mature area. And this has been really key for some of the work that we've been doing more recently, when we've been considering this as a single piece of geology. So when we look in this area, this is the Norwegian Sea, and the Bering Basin up here. And you look at some of the well data, obviously you have quite a lot of well data here, and what we see is large fan systems coming in, and these are sourced from Greenland in actual fact. So we go through the well data and we can start to get a good understanding of where it comes from, where the provenance is, and start to build up a better picture of the geology and prospectivity as we see it going across the margin. But it's not limited to that. We go further south, and this is the Merla Basin. And this has been a challenge in Norway to see the prospectivity here. We're in a basalt, it's a volcanic basin. And what we see here now is that we see some sediments coming in. We know from the northern Bering margin that we can source back from Greenland, and we start to pull out some areas of Paleocene fan systems that are going into sort of pre-basalt synclines in here, and these are becoming more and more prospective. And this is an area that we're investing in at the moment in 2017. When it comes to source rocks, as I mentioned, we information mainly from seafloor samples. So in the blue diamonds there, you can see a sort of a rough distribution of where we've taken some seafloor samples. Of course, quite heavily up in northeast Greenland over the licensing areas, but then down in Jameson Land, onshore Greenland here. And then Jan Mayen, it's a very small microcontinent that sits in the middle of the North Atlantic. I've just put a couple of stars in here. There are, of course, hundreds of wells sitting in mid-Norway and just over 100 or so up in the Barents Sea. And we can get good information on that through Facies map browser and understand source intervals and so on. But when it comes to the seafloor samples over here, then we're looking at a lot of these sort of techniques to try and understand where we are with our source rock. So we do TARC, Rockefeller work, vitrinite reflectance and so on, and then try and put this back into the stratigraphic column that we've been working with. When we do that, then we can create pseudo wells based on the information that we have from the interpretation of the seismic data. We can look at potential reservoir temperatures and things going in there. We can also look at, of course, for pseudo wells, where we get expulsion, or rather when we get expulsion, and what's being expelled. So in this case, we see early to late Cretaceous expulsion of oil into our traps that we see up in the Jurassic section. So we have a reasonable handle for such a frontier area as northeast Greenland on the prospectivity, trap, reservoir, sea, hydrocarbons, and so on. So when we start looking at analogues, then we want to take a look and have a look and see what we've got in Barents Sea. So this was the discovery of about 500 million barrels of oil sitting in the Skrugard, and then down here in Norway, we're seeing Hedren, Asgard, and Ormenonga, all significant hydrocarbon discoveries. And so when we want to look back over the northeast Greenland side and have a look for more of the analogues there, and we see certainly analogues that we have to the Hedren field. We see those up in northeast Greenland here. I mean, we're looking at a general geological trend which continues all the way up the margin. Saying that we consider it one piece of geology. Asgard, certainly coming over here, we see similar structures there to put together into the full picture. So, if we go back to the original map, we started off really with an objective of taking the knowledge from a very mature margin and putting it over into northeast Greenland, so that we can help prove up the prospectivity of this area. What we found that when we did this, and our interpretations were also more mature in this area. So when we started to do this, we learned a lot about northeast Greenland, but in turn we've been able to put a lot of that knowledge back into how we're understanding certainly the more frontier areas of our mature margins. And this has led to some of the big investments that we're making out in Norway as well. Of course, all of this gets done with lots of intercompany work and lots of different disciplines involved. So certainly thanks to work done by GPSI and many other collaborators, that's how we've been able to put together this work. With that, I'll say thank you very much.
Any questions for Will? All right, thank you, Will. So our next presentation, 2D cubed, exploring the margins with 325,000 square kilometers of data. Ben, thank you.
All right. As you all know, seismic comes in different shapes and sizes. It's the level of detail and against cost that decide what type of seismic we use in the areas. So 2D covers large areas, but samples the geology quite poorly. We have a variety of streamer 3D tools, and all seismic vendors is claiming their technology is the best. But if we put modern broadband processing onto them, they're fairly similar. In the extreme end of seismic, we have peak cable, which is a ultra high resolution seismic that we have used a lot in the Barents Sea. Today, I want to talk about a new 3D product in the low resolution end of the scale. What it lacks in fine detail, it takes back in size. So here we see the North Atlantic margins, and there is some 3D here, but the dominant data type here is still 2D seismic. So I put the focus here on Northeast Greenland again, and this is the incubator for this new technology. Oh, have sound. That's fine. So the sole reason why I showed you this again is that streamer 3D seismic is not possible here. This is good condition in prime season. This is the Northeast Greenland database, and the more dense clusters here is active production licenses. Over 8 seasons, we have gathered about 30,000 kilometers of 2D. And even if it's quite dense here within the licenses, the operators ask us constantly, can we do 3D? They need 3D to reach their targets. So, past 2.5 years, TGS has developed a new technology, a software code, to make 3D cubes out of 2D database. We call it 2D cube. The geology here is challenging, including large unconformities, heavy faulting, and salt. And we use the main part of the R&D time to solve and to make this cold image, these challenging things in a geologically right way. So what is 2D cube? Basically, it is to gather all available 2D data, multi-vintage, and create a normal 3D cube. We go through 3 main phases: a merge phase, a model phase, and a migrating phase. So I'm going to go a little bit more in depth on what we do. So the first thing we do is to demigrate all the data using a regional velocity cube. Then we match the data with respect of frequency, phase, and static. So this is an arbitrary line with going through many vintages, and this is the result. Typically, we match the database to the latest vintage, normally deghosted modern data type. This is all automated in the code. It would have taken much resources, man-hours, to do this manually. Now, 2 very important steps comes. We make a structural model out of the 2D lines, kind of a structural fence model on the 2D lines. So all major events are picked and then correlated in circle around. From this, we make a detailed dip model, which is quite dense, and we use this for steering the interpolation. So then it's the 3D interpolation. It's done in an intelligent way using the dip model cube. This is an illustration of how that happens. So the end product here is then a stack 3D cube of 50 by 50 meter and 8 millisecond sample. Final step is normal 3D migration and scaling. So this is a 3D view of a 2D cube from the block 14, chevron block. And here is one of the major challenges, this conformity here, and to make the interpolation actually image this correctly. So before we exposed any clients to this product, we did heavy scrutinizing and testing, and yeah. So we know it would be good. So here is two interpretation. One is done on 2D and then gridded, and you can observe some artifacts that is typical because of poor vertical strain. The cube interpretation on the same event, it looks more geologically correct. It was much faster because you could then use all your 3D toolbox to do it. Then we gave the cube to some seismic Facies experts and asked if they could use it. And they concluded that the amplitudes was quite continuous, and also the events could be followed. The thickness of different sequences could be mapped out, and yes, they could use it. We also did a blind test. So how would a red line here, not used in making this cube from these black lines in the background, look like structurally and amplitude-wise? So this is the 2D line, not used in the cube. And this is the extraction from a cube, where the 2D line was not used as it. And you can see here that there's some small tweaks and differences in the structural image, but all major events is then present in the cube. Right, so we started to get happy about this result by this time, and so where's the logical place to go next? And then we found out that just jumping over to the conjugate side, Norwegian Sea was a good place. So here we just delivered a monster. It's 300,000 square kilometer 2D cube. And what was more natural than call it after Norse mythological monster called Jormungandr, and for short, J-cube. It is about 1,000 kilometers long, so it's big. And you see the coastline of Norway here. We have Ålesund, Kristiansund, Trondheim, up to Bodø. So it's quite big. And of course the entire width of the entire shelf here. So this is the two cubes then on the reconstructed map 55 million years ago. So this is the J cube and this is the neg cube. In the Norwegian Sea, we obviously have a lot of 3Ds. We have about 25% of this area covered with available 3Ds, and we wanted to use all the data we have in the Norwegian Sea. So we have also stitched in all available 3Ds. So this is the time slice in the top section, and challenge you to see where the 3Ds is. They're quite big. But if you jump a little bit further down and show the cube only and the stitch in, you can start to see them. So the matching tool we have is fairly good. So now I have, of course, a good seismic cube which covering everything in Norwegian Sea, but we have further ambitions. Already we have the velocity cube that covers the same area. We have inserted gravity and magnetic data into the seismic headers. So on certain bite locations you can find this data, different high-pass filtered potential field data. Then, as said, stitched in the 3Ds. The next ambition is to produce angle stack cubes from the modern 2D, maybe inversion cubes. And then we need to find a good way to get geologic information into to this cube, creating a total workstation environment for regional work. So, some final statements at the end. 2D cube is not 3D. It will never do the job of a 3D, but it's an efficient way for regional interpretation. So our hope is that we will have more regional interpretation if you have those cubes available. 2D cube successfully gave the operators in NEG a 3D2. We are sure that 2D cube also will play a role in the more mature areas. J cube could be expanded to the North Sea and the Barents Sea. Then we are looking at more than 1 million square kilometer. And of course it's applicable to all other basins around in the world. So special thanks to Will Whiteside in Houston and Sorsha O'Keefe in Bedford and their teams for the hard work getting us this promising technology. And then at the end, I made you a movie that goes through this J-cube. So we start here in the south, in the northern end of the North Sea. There are some round blocks. This is the entire extent of the Norwegian Sea. So out in the west, to the left, we have the marginal high, where we have strong evidence for Jurassic rocks coming up again in the oil window, and we are attacking that plane with big trees right now. So you see the most busy wells popping up here. It's the Halton Terrace and Nordland Bridge. There's very few wells drilled in the deep water. I guess it's Erlend Kjølhamar coming up here now, with the round blocks just outside. Going through the Ross Basin, and we are into the Whidden Basin now. So there we have a few gas discoveries out here, but non-major discoveries, except the Osterhansted that will be actually on stream next year. This is the Osterhansted. So, and then we move to the Nordland 6 area, which is closed. But we have a lot of 2D here. And there's some nice pictures. Yeah. So, thank you for listening.
Great. Any questions for Beth?
What's your line density?
Is
now, of course, 5 kilometers good enough?
Oh, you mean the, well, it depends on the geology, of course, as always. But 5 times 5, we've done that in the North Sea. It works. We will be structurally to that level, of course. But then, obviously, if you have all the data with different azimuths, that helps a lot, not just 2 line directions. So, yeah, 5 by 5 should be fine. So, like, out here, Nova Scotia, you have density to do this also here. Other questions? Yeah, I forgot to mention, of course, this is a new product, and it will be scrutinized a lot. So we have made a thick, or about to make, I think Sindre is the one that has that, a thick user manual where we put all the benchmarking in, like showing feeds, how it looks in the cube by itself, and how it looks on 3D, how structurally accurate it is, and so forth. And we also will deliver a confidence cube, where at any place in the cube you can see how far you are from the nearest 2D line. If it's 3D, it's top score. If it's 2D, it's less, so forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. So one last presentation. Would like to show you, give you a project update for Newfoundland, Labrador, and Atlantic East Coast. This won't take very long, as it is the last presentation, but I think it bears mention of where we are, where we've been, and where we're going. First, we'll show you the Newfoundland, Labrador 2016 projects. In 2016, it was a very good season. We acquired almost 42,000 2D kilometers, just over 7,000 kilometers offshore Labrador, 17,532 kilometers offshore Newfoundland, and then approximately the same amount offshore Newfoundland Grand Banks. The Grand Banks data set, it's worth pointing out, was done with a 10-kilometer streamer and a slightly longer shot point interval. That was to allow us to get a much deeper record length. Our record length in that area was 13 seconds, so we needed a little bit longer shot point interval to get that. The other areas were 25-meter shot point intervals and 8-kilometer cable. So this brought us to a total from 2011 to 2016 of 153,771 kilometers of 2D data offshore Newfoundland and Labrador. This is the blow-up of our Labrador area, and we'd like to very quickly go through the 2016 project status. The South Labrador Sea 2D, the 2016 2D data set, the fast track was delivered in middle of February. The final data is scheduled to be delivered by June 15th. This shows our Northeast Newfoundland slope data set in red here. That's the data we acquired in 2016. Fast track data was delivered April 15th, and the final data scheduled by September 15th. This was the 17,531 kilometers. This is what we call the Southeast Grand Banks area. You can see in red the data that was acquired in 2016. Fast track delivered. This is essentially the same schedule as the Northeast Newfoundland slope. April 15th fast track, September 15th for final PROCMIC. You saw earlier our Lab C reprocessing project that Josef addressed. The time schedule for this, phase 1, the fast track was already been delivered in January. In January, we have the final PSTM and PSDM to be delivered June 30th. And then phase 2, which is the remaining lines, the gray lines that you're showing there, will be delivered by the end of the year. And then we acquired a 3D in 2016, the East Flemish Pass 3D. It provides a seamless merge to the Southern Flemish Pass 3D, which is just to the west. The final output area of the combination of the new acquisition plus the Southern Flemish Pass 3D is 2,341 square kilometers. Fast track has been delivered end of February. The pre-stack time scheduled July 31st, and pre-stack depth by August 30th. Here's our 2017 projects. We have, and our confirmed PGS vessels will be doing this. The Atlantic Explorer is going to be the 2D vessel that is currently offshore acquiring data. The Ramform, I think that's the Tempest. She is actually sailing this afternoon. She'll be offshore hopefully shortly if she's not offshore now. and she'll be starting on, hopefully very quickly get the gear out. She'll be going 16 cables. The Ramform Titan is the next vessel off that's in the lower part of the screen, and then the Sterling, Ramform Sterling is the fourth vessel that will be acquiring data in the area. Our TD program in Southeast Grand Banks, approximately 12,700 kilometers. As I said, the Atlantic is out there right now acquiring data, and she's already, as of May 21st, 1,700 kilometers acquired to date. So a good start to the season there. The South Labrador Sea, which is the balance of the 2D program, which is approximately 8,300 kilometers, and we anticipate that acquisition schedule to start in late August. One thing to mention before we move on into the 3Ds is there is a possibility that we will, between the Grand Banks and up into Labrador, be in Newfoundland, depending on what needs to be done or what we feel needs to be done, or customers tell us what needs to be done as far as any kind of new acquisition in the or completing areas that weren't acquired last year in the Newfoundland area. We had some closures during the crowd fisheries and things like that. So there's a possibility that some of those 2D kilometers will be in the Newfoundland area. The long range 3D, I think that you saw a picture of it earlier. That's as you can see, it's a program right here. It's 9,100 square kilometers, and acquisition schedule starting in early June. That'll be the vessel that is sailing offshore as we speak. The Cape World 3D, 3,650 square kilometers, and that's down in the south. You can see there, and we anticipate acquisition schedule to start in early July. Harbor D 3D. At least 2,731 square kilometers. We hope to grow that and make that a larger program, depending on interest in the area. Acquisition schedule starting in July. And then the fourth 3D, fourth and last. I don't think there's any more vessels that we can shoot any more data. It's the East Flemish Pass 3D Phase 2. 1,950 square kilometers, and it ties right into the Phase 1, and it's just off to the east. What we're showing you here is the CC project we had in the Gulf of Mexico. Over 880,000 square kilometers of multi-beam data, 15-meter resolution bathymetry, and it's 750 meters or deeper. Full basin, and it's the largest seep survey to date. That movie that was playing I don't know if you had a chance to see it, that was from data that was in the Gulf of Mexico. It's pretty fascinating stuff. We hope to have a Newfoundland Labrador CC program. What we're showing here are the maps of the different areas and where we're proposing the program. We're proposing 115,000 square kilometers multi-beam data, and that's in water depths greater than 750 meters. And the reason behind that water depth is it's if you get into shallower areas than 750 meters, the width of your beam doesn't cover nearly as enough area, so it gets prohibitively expensive the shallower you get. So we're using the idea that we'll be doing this in water depths greater than 750 meters. To keep our program on schedule. 250 piston cores, and then for our proposed year 1, coverage selected AOI areas. 75,000 square kilometers multi-beam in year 1, 150 piston cores, which translates into 3 months of multi-beam acquisition plus 1 month of core acquisition. And then the Atlantic East Coast has been a little bit of a roller coaster. But at the end of the day, I think we're on the kind of the thrilling part of the roller coaster. We hope that we'll get a permit very soon to acquire our 2D I-95 regional 2D project. The size is approximately 103,000 kilometers. The plan is to acquire it with 12,000 meter streamer, and then 4 different outputs: a fast track, Kirkhoff pre-stack time, preliminary Kirkhoff pre-stack depth,
and then the final Kirchhoff pre-stack depth, and the final RTM pre-stack depth. And then we hope, then the idea is we'll also have a multi-beam coring steep study to go along with that in the U.S. Atlantic Margin program. 370,000 square kilometers multi-beam, 1,000 piston cores, 2,000 geochemical analysis, 100 heat flow sites, and then 100 JPCs, biostratigraphy at sedimentary rates. And what we're showing there is the potential program for that, for the study.
Well, I do want to thank everyone for coming here today. I really appreciate some of the presentations. Those were actually, it was some fascinating things for a geophysicist that doesn't see rocks very often. So that was really good. Please join us. We're having a happy hour here. Beer, wine, soft drinks. If you could join us, that would be much appreciated. If you have any questions or concerns, we have a lot of people here who would want to answer any questions you may have on what you saw today or any other subject that you want to talk about. Again, thank you very much.